just going to come right out and say it. I hated living in White Lake, Michigan, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. Okay, hate it's a strong word. In reality, I didn't literally hate White Lake, but it definitely wasn't the best fit for me. Today, I want to share my personal, slightly exaggerated review of what it was like living in White Lake, the good, the bad, the quirky, the ugly, all from my perspective. And trust me when I say I am nitpicking hardcore. Every city or community has its good and bads. Remember, this is just one guy's experience, not an objective verdict on White Lake as a whole. So don't take the word hate too seriously here. It's more about my preferences and how this town just didn't quite match them. Quick backstory, if you've been following the channel, you might recall I actually made a video about moving to White Lake about 3 years ago. It was my 1-year update after relocating from Brighton, and I talked about all kinds of things, even did a driving tour, and more recently, I made another video about why people say they hate White Lake. Yup, I really leaned into that theme, the hate thing. I'll link both those videos in the description in case you want to check them out later. In that why people hate White Lake video, I read real comments from White Lake residents, and let's just say they didn't hold back. Folks complained about stuff like the complete lack of sidewalks and all the BS development popping up around town. Translation, people are annoyed that new strip malls keep getting built when there are empty buildings sitting around. And you literally can't walk anywhere because, surprise, there's not a whole lot of sidewalks, but they're working on it. When I saw those comments, I was nodding along like, yep, I feel that. So trust me, I'm not alone in some of these critiques of White Lake. But again, take it with a grain of salt. These are opinions, mine and others, not facts carved in stone. Some are, obviously, because the sidewalk's not there, so that's a fact. But now on to the reasons White Lake isn't or wasn't my cup of tea. The first big one for me was the lack of real downtown. I grew up in Brighton, which has this awesome, small, vibrant downtown. You can park the car, stroll around, grab ice cream, bump into people you know. White Lake, on the other hand, has M59. For those not familiar, M59 or Highland Road is basically a 5-lane highway that runs through the township. That is White Lake's main strip, and it's no quaint downtown. Picture strip malls, big box stores, fast traffic zooming by at 55 miles per hour, maybe even 65. That's the closest thing to a city center there. You want to take an evening stroll to a cafe or boutique shop? Nope, not in White Lake, unless you consider walking alongside a 55-mile-an-hour road with no sidewalks a fun time, because I sure don't. For someone like me who loves a good downtown vibe or being within walking distance of one, this was a huge downside. It's not the end of the world. I mean, if there's a compromise that's needed to be made, it's probably that one. I mean, I knew going in that White Lake's downtown was basically the M59 corridor, but it definitely took away some of that charm I was used to, and I didn't really realize it at the time. That being said, they are trying to give White Lake more of a focal point, more of that downtown community vibe. And a good example is the new little civic center development behind the Kroger.
All right, thanks a lot, partner. We're going to turn now to a nearly $50 million development moving forward in White Lake Township after a sophisticated cyber attack caused a slight delay.
You may remember our coverage of the chaos back in early December.
Yeah, well, now people living in the area eager to see the multi-million-dollar project start coming to life.
The new Civic Center is costing a pretty penny, more than $45 million in the area of Highland and Porter Roads. 7
News Detroit reporter Darren Cunningham taking us there, where he's speaking to residents and the township supervisor about this exciting development.
Well, the entrance that we're going into right now will be the Southern Loop Road.
White Lake Township Supervisor Rick Kowal took us around the new Civic Center construction site on Elizabeth Lake Road. It was a cornfield.
Turning into an area where people will be able to gather and hopefully have a nice sense of community.
I've got to give them credit there. It's a nice concept with shops and gathering spaces already located there and making it more walkable, and it could help bring people together, sure. It's going to add some congestion, but it's progress toward having something that feels like a downtown core. Closely related to the no downtown issue is the lack of things to do and places to eat. Don't get me wrong, White Lake isn't tiny, but most of the entertainment and dining is clustered along that same M59 stretch. There are a handful of restaurants, sure, but not a ton of variety, And if you're a foodie or you like lots of options for nightlife, White Lake might leave you wanting some more. I found myself driving to neighboring towns like Milford or Commerce or even down to Waterford when I wanted a nicer, different change of scenery. M59 has the basic necessities, your grocery store, Home Depot, some chain restaurants, but if you don't live right near that corridor, it's not as convenient as it looks actually. The township is fairly spread out, and without sidewalks or a true town center, you can't just hop on a bike or walk to your favorite hangout spot. For example, I lived on a lake a few miles off M59, and even though everything was on that main road, it still felt like a trek to get there. So while White Lake has some amenities, it can feel like there aren't many accessible restaurants or fun spots unless you jump in the car and drive out of the neighborhood each time. In short, it can be a little boring if you're someone who enjoys having a lot of activities right at your doorstep. Next up, congestion and traffic. You wouldn't think a semi-rural lake-filled area would have traffic issues, but oh boy, White Lake can get congested at times. Part of the problem is that the infrastructure hasn't quite caught up to the growth. The roads in White Lake kind of wind around all the lakes and subdivisions, and there aren't many roads to spread out besides M59. That means if there's an accident or construction on that corridor, you're often stuck doing these long detours around a lake or two just to get where you're going. And I learned this the hard way when they did construction on M59 for the 110th time, and it forced me into a scenic tour of back roads for a few weeks. During rush hour or even the school pickup time, certain intersections in White Lake can just back up. It's not soul-crushing Metro Detroit traffic by any means, but it's enough to get a headache, especially when you know it's basically because there's one road to get from A to B. The township is working on it though. I've heard plans about adding a few more roundabouts on top of the ones they already have to help keep traffic moving. With all the different school districts that overlap in White Lake, plus more people moving in, the traffic has ticked up in recent years because it's one of the few affordable places left by today's housing market standards. Anyway, infrastructure is a bit behind the times, but at least improvements are on the way. Still, as of my time living there, the congestion and quirky road layout were definitely something that frustrated. Alright, let's talk about something literally in the water, and that's the water quality in White Lake. If you've never lived in an area with well water or hard water, this might surprise you. White Lake's water is hard, like full of minerals, lots of iron, that sort of thing. We're talking orange stains if you don't treat it, and a distinct metallic taste at times. I found myself relying on a Brita filter for everything, drinking water, cooking water, you name it. And that Brita filter, it worked overtime. I was blown away how fast the filters would get gunked up with mineral deposits. And even though the house had a water softener system, I still would see buildup on the coffee maker and have to run a cleaning cycle occasionally just for the thing to make coffee. To be fair, I'm sure not every home has the same exact experience. Some folks have extra filtration systems or iron filters, and that's perfectly fine. Not a deal breaker, but definitely one of those small things you have to get used to, and I would suggest investing in if the house you buy there doesn't have it. It's one of those places where if you embrace the lake lifestyle, the fishing, the boating, the backyard bonfires, etc., you might absolutely love it. My preferences were just a little bit different, and that's really the key here. These are my preferences. Some people would trade a downtown for a quiet lakefront any day of the week. I can't blame them. White Lake has a lot to offer for the right person, even if it wasn't the ideal fit for me. So, do I actually hate White Lake? No, it just didn't check all the boxes for me. I help people move there to from within the whole area, so I'm sure some of you watching either live in White Lake currently or have in the past, and you might have a totally different take on it than me. In fact, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think of White Lake, Michigan? If you've lived there or if you've spent time there, what was your experience? Drop it in the comments below. Maybe you completely disagree with me and want to defend White Lake's honor, go for it. Or maybe you have even crazier White Lake stories or pet peeves. I am definitely all ears. And just to reiterate, I don't actually hate White Lake. It's a lovely community for many people. It just wasn't my perfect match, and that's okay. Every town has its pros and cons, and part of this channel is about giving you honest, relatable, reliable perspectives on living in different places in Michigan. And as always, if you're moving to Michigan in one day or a million, I'd love to help. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.